By now, we've made our way through most of the house renovations. We decided not to do anything with the kitchen and bathrooms. They would have to wait, and we would be starting on the retaining walls. By creating the retaining walls, they weren't just to stabilize the house and mitigate the slope issues and the drainage issues. It also was an opportunity to create a bigger and more usable space on the side of the house for our new backyard. Our backyard would be able to include a little garden shed and much more usable space for children to run around in. But it was time to head outside. The front of our house sits on a pretty steep slope, and just walking up the driveway feels like you're scaling a small mountain, and trying to mow that lawn, definitely a cardio workout for the day. But that wasn't the only issue with the front of the house. We've also been facing some challenges with the drainage to the house. The downpipes were not installed correctly under the ground, and we didn't realize that was what was happening until we dug them up. With the drainage issues and the slope out the front of the house had started to lean a little bit on the garage side, and we knew we had to prioritize getting the drainage and the slope fixed as soon as possible. This is what the front of the house looked like before. It's not too bad, although the bushes were quite overgrown. And this is what the side looked like. This is what the side of the house looked like from the street view. These trees were quite tall. It did give privacy, but it also blocked the front of the house. This is what we temporarily did with the shed while we were renovating the yard. Here we are clearing the garden. After a few hours of hard work, you can really see the difference. The garden bed is nearly empty, and we're almost ready to start digging up the foundations. Next, we start digging up the yard to create the footings for the retaining walls. Trust the process. I saw the pipe when it came out before and you were still working. And I'm like, well, internet and electricity is still working, so I think we're okay. What seemed like quite the straightforward task quickly proved to be difficult and time-consuming. As we dug, we hit so many tree roots and boulders that were hidden beneath the lawn and the old gardens. We hired several small diggers over the course of creating these retaining walls to help us dig the footings for the excavation of the retaining walls. These challenges certainly added hours and days to our timeline, but we had created so much of a mess that we could not go back. We could only go forward. The tree roots were certainly frustrating at times, but we knew that it would all be worth it in the end. Despite the setbacks, we made slow yet steady progress, and little by little the trenches were dug and ready for the footings. There was so much messy work in preparation for building the retaining walls that when we were finally able to start laying down the first footings for the retaining walls, it felt like we had finally made progress, even though it was just the first footing of the retaining walls. After starting to build the first retaining wall, we realized we needed to tackle the drainage, and that's when we learned of the issues with the drainage. After digging them up, we found that they were crushed and compacted with dirt, causing the drainage issues that we were experiencing in the foundation of our house. Drainage issues was one of the main reasons that we decided to do the retaining walls. It was really quite a relief to get this sorted out. After fixing the drainage issues, we were able to then move on to the second retaining wall. Here is a look at our new backyard with the second retaining walls almost finished and the columns being built. At this point, we could really start to see the retaining walls and how they would start to look. We were really quite excited about the retaining walls from this point, but you can see that we still had quite the mess and work to go. on the second set of retaining walls. Okay, the next part of the project was building a fence to enclose the backyard, and we decided to continue the second retaining wall all the way to the boundary fence. Another pillar was built, and we would then be able to have a completely fenced in backyard for pets and children. And we built a gate that can be opened and access the backyard with a car. Moving into the backyard, we were able to start the retaining wall. It was probably the hardest, as we ended up having to dig the footings out by hand, which was quite strenuous, and we probably should have just rehired a digger to do the work. We did thankfully hire machinery to backfill and level out the new backyard, and once the retaining wall was built and the backyard was level, we were able to lay the foundations for a garden shed and then move our garden shed into place on a concrete footing. And this really freed up space in the backyard for more usable backyard entertainment. After 3 retaining walls, pillars, a fence, and a garden shed, we're about halfway through the completion of this project. Now all we have to do was 4 retaining walls and a staircase. Ever since we brought this place back in 2019, I have wanted steps that went up to the front door so that myself and visitors didn't have to walk up the steep driveway and around the corner. There was quite a bit of math involved to work out, and I am so thankful that Andrew was the best person for the job. These last retaining walls were probably our biggest project, but thanks to an amazing neighbor, we were able to actually complete them in a decent amount of time, and we are so very thankful to this generous individual and so very happy with the outcome of these retaining walls. After this, the next was cleaning up and fixing up the earthworks. There was so much dirt to move around and even eventually discard, as we didn't need that much backfilling. And then once we had finished doing all of the removal of the excess dirt, it was time to go ahead and put gardens into the retaining walls and of course seed the ground for a new lawn out the front and out the back. Here you can see the backyard garden with the grass that was coming in. It's quite shaggy there, as we were trying to let the new growth come in before we tried mowing, and it had rained a decent amount for the grass to start coming up, so it's still very patchy, but it was starting to develop a new lawn after all of the earthworks and months of chaos. And this is what it was starting to look like towards the end of the project. And this is what it was looking like after about a month of growth and mowing as well in there. We couldn't be more happy with how this turned out. It just makes the place look so much more elevated, and we just can't believe that this place is ours. Just a reminder, this is the before and this is the after of the front of the house. If you liked this video, please give us a big thumbs up. If you have any questions, drop us a comment below, and go ahead and subscribe if you want more house renovation content.